I have to admit you lost me there until you talked about medications, and then I'm right there with you. So. Speaking of which, our next candidate, independent candidate, member of NORML, is John Shaw. John Shaw, you know, when we did some research with him, 49 million hits on the internet. Native of Tallahassee and attended Leon High School, CEO of John Shaw Computers. John, if you'll tell us a little bit more about you. Thanks.
Thank you for having me here. My name is John Shaw. I'd like to clarify one thing. I'm not a member of NORML, so I do associate with them regularly. That's okay. Well, a little bit about myself. I'm John Shaw. I'm 22 years old. I'm an independent candidate for this seat. I went to Leon High School. Oh, I'm sorry. I went to Leon High School from 2000 to 2004. Left Leon High School in 2004 and decided to get my GED, actually. I did not pursue college, which is alarming to a lot of individuals. But instead, I started a business. I worked with computers most of my life. From when I was about 8 years old, I got my first computer. And it broke when I was 11. And I was devastated by this. And instead of sitting there crying, I went ahead and opened it up. I looked at it and I fixed it. So since then, I've been working actively with computers. Helping the people in this community is something I love to do. And so that's the basis of my business anyways. I'll tell you a little about why I'm running. There's three main points that I like to say about my platform. The first is my age, and a lot of people would say that my age is a factor against this campaign. But I like to think that with the political ideology of the 21st century and the amount of change that's happening going on, especially if you look at the presidential elections, I think it's important to have fresh new faces and young people in legislature. As Jerry Sutphin pointed out, the last elected officials that we had left it off not entirely completing their job. And if you're to say that only people with experience should enter this political scene, what have we had over the last century or so? Has it only been people with political experience? And if that's the case, then perhaps we should try something new. And along that line, I'm also running as an independent candidate. When I first learned about this, I was alarmed. There's never been an independent to win a House seat. And to some people, that's no big deal. It's usually Democrat or Republican. That's just how it is. But to me, I feel there needs to be a certain amount of neutrality, especially in the House. And I fear that the use of labels over so long, especially in politics, can prove detrimental. So it's important to attempt to elect somebody who maybe, not so much a centrist, but somebody who can represent both parties equally. So along that line, let me say a little about the third point, which is basically my platform. This issue is a little touchy, and if it makes you uncomfortable to talk about, I apologize, but I feel it's very important to talk about. So before I begin, I'd like to start with a quote from a fairly prominent individual from Florida. He says, my drug control strategy reflects our will and determination to reverse the years of lost human, social, and economic potential wrought by the illegal drug trade, and to bring down appreciably the numbers of our citizens caught in the grip of drug abuse. My administration is determined to reduce drug use in Florida by 50%. This ambitious goal can only be achieved with the commitment of our efforts and resources on many fronts in awareness, prevention, treatment, and law enforcement. Jeb Bush, 43rd Governor of the state of Florida. Now, by show of hands, how many people in this room feel as though drug use after 1999, when he made this comment, has gone down by 50%? Anybody? How about 25%? 10%? 5%? We got 10%? We got to take on 10? About 5%. 5%. After 1999, it went down by a margin, and as of 2005 has risen by 5%. Now it's at this point where I usually say it's unfair of me to deduce that it has risen because of that resolution, but it is fair of me to say that drug usage will continue for no reason in particular. It is just not something that is easily controllable by the masses. And by instilling fear and creating laws against the public, it's proven to be very detrimental, and prohibition in general does not work. If you remember during the 1920s and 30s with alcohol prohibition, it was very ineffective and had reverse effects to what we wanted to see happen. So not to take up too much more time, economically speaking, this would be the most sound decision we could make to reform our drug policies. I don't know if anybody knows, but hemp was once the primary cash crop of America. George Washington grew it, as well as Thomas Jefferson. It was also required by farmers to be grown. It has lots of uses. I'll get more into that. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, take one quick deep breath and let's get it under control. Okay.
I feel as though Amendment 5 is unnecessary, as with many amendments that we'll be putting into the House in the coming years. I feel as though if we end this drug war now, we won't have to worry about making new taxes, getting rid of old taxes. The amount of money that we could make is endless. Not only money we could save fighting this endless drug war, but creating a new cash crop, taxing, legalizing. I see you all are in agreement, so I'll just stop right there.
Next question. Okay, last question from the sheriff, and then we'll do 1 minute closing from each comp, in reverse order that we started with.
I was just curious if Mr. Shaw brought any samples of NORML.
As Michelle goes through the approach real quickly, John, on the advice of counsel, I advise you to stay silent. Mr. Campbell, that's just entirely unfair.
On August 26th, John Shaw, independent candidate.
I'd like to leave you saying that I know I'm young, I know I'm independent, but I'm not naive. And I know in my heart of hearts that the people that I've talked to today are may not be necessarily ready for this kind of change. But what I would like to ask of you is to take the next 3.5 months to get to know me, allow me to get to know you. Perhaps we could feel comfortable with each other, and who knows what will happen. So thank you for the opportunity.